So as I mentioned, I am a member of the Geo Professional Business Association, and it's an organization of geotech, environmental, and engineering firms that come together to learn more about business. And I'm going to give you a little bit more information about GBA afterwards, but if you're not a member of GBA already, it's an excellent organization, and if your company is a member, I hope you're taking advantage of all of the assets that GBA has on its website available to you. And I do have one slide at the end that will talk about the mission of GBA so you can learn a little bit more about it. So quick background on me. A lot of what I do is based around my background as a Dell Tech partner for 25 years, as well as my current role, which is the president of AEC Business Solutions. 25 years of helping companies implement systems, which is one of the huge internal initiatives that many companies go through. I started to see a lot of areas where companies were losing money. And so I wrote the book, Find the Lost Dollars. And if you stick around to the very end, I'm going to give you an opportunity to get a free copy of the book and also learn more about what we do. And AEC Business Solutions is currently focused on training your employees so that they learn enough about the business to be able to help the company to be more profitable. And that's what I'm focused on, very passionate about helping companies, A&E firms, to be more profitable. So let's talk about, what are we going to talk about today? First of all, I want to touch on why change is so important to your organization and why it's important for you to understand how to communicate that to your company so that you can get everybody on board with helping you to make the important changes in your organization. We're going to talk a little bit about why change initiatives fail. What's going on? Why does this happen? I'm going to use the example as we go along of a CRM implementation. And the reason I do that is because I hear over and over from firms that they continue to struggle with getting a CRM implementation to be successful in the organization. We're going to talk about why does that happen and what can you do about it. I believe a big part of solving the problem is just really understanding what's going on in your company. So we're going to talk about some ways that you can do that. How can you understand where you are now and where you want to go in order to make sure that these change initiatives are prioritized properly and really take hold. Then we're going to talk about change management and some best practices around that. And then we're going to finish up with talking about accountability, and that's really what a lot of this comes down to, and why A&E firms are challenged with accountability and what you can do about that. So I hope this sounds like exactly why you're here and what you wanted to learn about. And we have a very large audience today, and I will stick around as long as needed afterwards to answer all of your questions. So don't hesitate to think about any questions that you want to ask at the end. So what is change? You know, there's a lot of things that companies try to do. And when they try to do them, they find that it's way more difficult than they thought it was going to be. It could be something like a new business strategy. So we're going to change the way we do business. It could be a new office that you're opening for whatever strategic reasons that you have. You might be buying another company, or you might be merging into another company. And I hear that about 50% of M&A activity is not successful, mainly because companies come together and they're not as profitable as they thought they would be, or there's a lot of issues with getting groups merged together. A business process improvement is always more challenging than many people think it's going to be. Putting in a new system, which, as I mentioned, I'm going to try to fold in some areas of putting in a new CRM, but everything we talk about with a new CRM, it could be a new ERP system, accounting system, any system that you're looking at putting in. It could be new leadership. Maybe you're transitioning leadership. You had older leadership that's retiring. You have younger people coming up. They're frustrated because they're trying to change the culture. And changing the culture of a firm is very, very, very difficult. We're going to talk a little bit about that and what's going on there. It could be an organizational restructure. many companies are restructuring right now, and it seems the trend that I'm seeing is companies are moving from managing their firm on a geographic basis, so offices and geographic regions, to more of a market-driven structure, where you're focusing on maybe education, healthcare, government contracts, etc. So you're focused, instead of measuring performance based on how this office is doing, you're looking at the market as a whole. And that's a huge trend that I'm seeing, and it can be very, very difficult. It may require completely restructuring your leadership. You might have a business model change. So more and more companies are looking at how can we sell on value rather than price. But how can we do more lump sum instead of time and materials? All kinds of things. How can we go more commercial instead of government? That could be a whole business model change for your company. And then you may have a rapid growth or even downsizing in certain areas that are challenging. Just because you grow doesn't mean you're more profitable. And it can be very, very challenging to grow because you may not have the infrastructure in place. You may need to put in new policies and procedures that are really challenging people to cooperate and follow the new policies. So we're going to talk about how all of these kind of work and what you can do about it. So first of all, let's talk about why change is important. And Jack Welch, who was the former CEO of GE, said if change is happening on the outside faster than on the inside, the end is in sight. And as many of you know, the world is changing very, very quickly. Globalization, technology, even politics and the economic environment. And many firms were caught off guard 10 years ago when the economy just crashed. And that's because they weren't really prepared for the kinds of changes that were about to take place. I'd like to argue that I don't feel that the majority of engineering firms are focused on how to be ready for change and are nimble enough or agile enough to take advantage even of the opportunities that are presented when changes occur. So it's just something to think about. Why do you need change? It's happening. It's happening anyway, and you really don't have a choice. It's just how do you want to deal with it? That's why Eric Keene, who I saw speak at ACEC several years ago, he delivered a beautiful commentary on how HDR is dealing with change and innovation. And he said, change is mandatory. It's not something you can decide, do we need to do it or not? You must keep up with what's going on in the world and be ready to deal with it. Of course, technology plays a big part of that. Technology is always changing. There's new things coming out. There's new ways of making your office, your work, your business more profitable, more automated, more efficient. And if you're not using those tools, then somebody else might have a competitive advantage over you. Efficiency. I see lack of efficiency in many organizations that I work with, and I'm constantly amazed at how so much time gets wasted every day on things that aren't efficient. And so change very often has to do with making things work better. You need change to make more money. You know, we all want to make more money, and the more profitable you are, the more you can change, and the more you can change, the more money you can make. It's kind of a catch-22, but it's true. You need to make more money in order to grow and be more successful. You need to stay relevant. If you're out there right now trying to hire people, if you're trying to bring on more skilled employees as well as be part of the college recruiting effort, the new people coming in your business want to see how relevant you are in today's world. What is your brand image? How do you look on social media and online? And are you keeping up with the times, or are you still back, 10, 15 years ago in terms of the way your company is doing things? So staying relevant is a very important reason to embrace change. You might be missing out on opportunities if you're not keeping up with things. And I really believe that. I really believe that when the recession hit, there were certain firms that were able to take advantage of technology and of opportunities that presented themselves. Now, if you're growing, I think by definition, you are changing. You can't grow and not be changing. Things are changing whether you want them to or not. It's how you deal with the change and how you embrace it and look at it closely and how you can make it work for you instead of work against you. So if you're growing right now, you are changing. You just may not be changing in the most beneficial way. And then we have to talk about profitability, because just because you're growing doesn't mean you're more profitable. And I put this chart up here because many years ago, Apple was growing out of control, but their profits were actually not growing at all. So it just shows you that you can be growing as a company and your profits can be actually be decreasing as a percentage of your revenue. So it's very important to change so that you can remain profitable. So what I've seen and out there working with many, many firms are there are a lot of challenges that are going on with change. And in my book, Find the Lost Dollars, I write about culture traps. And I really believe that a lot of the challenges start with culture. And in the book, I write about 10 culture traps. One of them is, this is how we've always done it. And when I'm working with our clients, I hear it over and over again, why are you doing things a certain way? And it's because that's how we've always done it, not because necessarily it's the best way to do things. So those culture traps of that's how we've always done it, or we don't like to hold people accountable and enforce our policies, those types of culture traps are holding you back from being the best company that you can be. And so really, really taking a look at that culture and understanding it can be a huge challenge to your change. Many people think that somebody else is always the problem, and you might be having somebody's face pop up in your mind right now as to somebody in your company who is like that, who is always saying, well, it's not me that needs to change, it's everyone else that needs to change. I think a big part of the reason companies don't change is they really don't have a good detailed way of looking at what is really going on right now. They think they know what's going on, and I actually work with companies to do a business management assessment, a very, very detailed assessment of what's really going on in the company, and I'll mention that again later on, but it's very eye-opening because many firms find out that what they thought was working well, other people in the company don't think is working very well. And there's a lot of difference of opinion as to what's working. Even simple things like having a certain policy in place, let's say for timesheets, one person will think it's going great and somebody else will say, well, we don't even have a policy. So there can be a wide variation within your organization about the way people think about what's really going on. And that's a huge challenge that you have to overcome in order to improve. Planning. One reason that many companies are challenged with change is that they don't know how to implement that change. They don't know how to plan what needs to happen. So they know that they want to make something better, but they fail to really do the careful planning and organizing that's required to make that change successful. And very often that's because they don't really know what outcomes they really want. And again, I'll use the example of a CRM system. I go into many companies and they say, oh, well, we're implementing a new CRM system. And I'll say, okay, well, what are your goals for the CRM? And they'll basically tell me that their goals are exactly what they're already doing in the existing CRM or an existing process that they have or something that they're doing in spreadsheets, but they're really not taking a broader look at what the CRM system can deliver for them or what other goals that they might want to evaluate. And they're not really looking at the process improvements that are going to have to happen and the change in behaviors that are going to have to happen in order for that to be successful. So really need to understand your outcomes and your goals in order to really figure out how to implement a change initiative of any type. And many companies fail to really understand the potential outcomes that are available to them in leading a new change initiative. Another huge challenge to change initiatives is we're too busy, right? Everybody is busy. Have you ever walked around your office, even when your staff has been underutilized? Have you ever walked around your office and said, are you busy? And somebody said no. It's very rare for someone to say they're not busy. People are always busy. The key is, are they busy doing the right things? Are they doing the things that the firm treats as a priority and that is going to drive the company's goals and strategic initiatives forward? Or are they busy doing things that are lower priority, maybe busy work, and that aren't really valuable? Or things are so inefficient, the organization, they're busy doing things that are a waste of time. So again, that's why I go back to saying, do you know what's really going on? Because when somebody tells you they're too busy, you really have to understand why that is. Why are they saying they're too busy? And is it that you have too much work for them? Is it that they're taking too long to do the things that they're supposed to do? There's a number of reasons, and you really have to try to get to the bottom of that. And then maybe you really truly do have a lack of resources. If everyone in your organization is truly that busy, maybe you don't have enough staff focused on the real problems in your organization. And I do see this quite often, that by putting a new person in place in a certain role, like, for example, leading an initiative to put in a new system, or a sales role, or some other roles within your firm, that you can drive things forward so much faster. And in the long run, you'll make a lot more money than you would have spent by adding those resources. But very often that analysis isn't really done, and I think that's unfortunate. And then, of course, time management comes into play. And again, this does go back to priorities. Are your people prioritizing things correctly? Are they focused on the urgent and important things in the organization? Probably. Probably many of your employees are focused on number 1 and number 3 on this slide, being interrupted, email, lots and lots and lots of meetings, and other things like that. But they're not focused on quadrant 2, which is really where these big change initiatives take place. And those are the longer term initiatives that really help drive your company forward. So it's important to look at how people are managing their time. So another real huge issue is fear. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more as we go along, but a lot of the reason that people don't give you buy-in for your change initiatives is fear. They're afraid of how those change initiatives are going to affect them. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, about resistance to change and why that happens. Very, very important. And then finally, and this actually may be the most important of all of the challenges that you have with leading change in your company, is leadership. I go into organizations and I see real conflicts in the priorities of the leaders. And you could have a group, let's say you have 6 leaders in your executive leadership team. Do all 6 completely agree on what the most important priorities are, where to spend money, how to accomplish those priorities, and do they also agree about what's really going on in your organization? And what I have found, and I've been able to drill down into a lot more detail using our business management assessment, is that if you had a group of, let's say, 15 leaders, they all disagree to the point where it's probably an even distribution between a score of 1 to 6 on where they might answer a specific question on how your company is doing in the organization. So I see this over and over and over again, a real lack of consensus. And I personally believe this is one of your number 1 issues you have to deal with and should be focusing on if you feel that this is one of your biggest issues. Because if you don't take care of this, everything's going to unravel for you later on if you don't have leaders that are completely bought in to how to go forward and how to make that initiative work. So that's something to really think about. And we're going to go, as we go along, I'm going to hopefully give you some really good tips on how to deal with that, because that can be one of the toughest things to deal with. So first of all, I think you really need to know where you're starting from in order to implement any major change initiative within your organization. And so that really means doing a really good assessment of what's going on in your organization on a daily basis, what's working and what's not working. And what I do is I look at 9 areas of the business, from sales and proposals to estimating, scope creep, project management, cash flow, invoicing and billing, project management, client relationships, and time management. And also IT, what's going on with your IT systems. And when I look at those 9 areas and then break each of them down into people, processes, and systems, I'm able to see at a detailed level what's really going on. And I've actually developed an assessment tool that does that. And so it actually looks at each area of the business, and based on anonymous responses from your team, gives you scores in each of the area. And obviously green is pretty good, and yellow is mediocre, and red is really, really critical issue that's causing problems for the organization. And so there's lots of ways of trying to figure out what's going on in your organization. One way is to do an assessment. Another is to benchmark yourself against industry standards. So there's several organizations out there that do a great job of benchmarking. GBA has an excellent client survey they do. Deltec has the Clarity survey. PSMJ and Zweig each have an excellent series of different kinds of surveys that they do that give you a lot of benchmarking data to compare against your organization's data to see where you lie in the industry. So that's also an excellent way of looking. And then I kind of have a third way of trying to figure out what's going on in a company, and that's called a spreadsheet audit. And the reason for a spreadsheet audit is to figure out how many things are happening in your organization outside of your core systems. So if you look at all the policies and systems you've developed over the years, they rarely involve spreadsheets. Your company may have invested in a lot of systems, in a ERP accounting system, in a CRM system, a document management systems, other databases. But what you find is people decide they're not going to use your systems, and they go offline and they start creating their own system. And so a spreadsheet audit is a great way to figure out all the crazy things that are happening out there in your organization. And what this helps you do, and especially if you're implementing a new system, is it helps you figure out what you're starting with. How many spreadsheets are they? What are they being used for? And how much time is being wasted using those spreadsheets. So the next area that I want to look at is the best practices that you can implement within your company to really try and make sure that if you're going to take on a major change initiative, that you are following steps that are going to ensure your success. And, you know, when I look at the example of a CRM implementation, and that's because the majority of firms I talk with have either implemented a CRM. Majority of them have very big regrets about how they've implemented their CRM, and maybe many of them have implemented them and find that nobody's using them. I just talked to a very large firm today, and they implemented one a year ago, and no one is using it except for a few select people in their business development department, and that's unfortunate because it has tremendous value outside of that department. So it's either because people aren't using it, or you may be in a situation where you're getting ready to implement a CRM or in the process of implementing a CRM, and maybe you haven't thought through all the issues that could possibly happen in the implementation. Now, everything I'm going to talk about today is applicable to all those different types of change initiatives that we discussed. These are all best practices for making sure that any kind of change initiative you undertake is going to be successful. And so hopefully this will give you some guidance as to what you really need to do. So first of all, let's talk about leadership. Leadership is absolutely critical to any change initiative. So if you end up, let's say you end up having a strategic planning session at the beginning of the year, and you're in, as part of that retreat or that strategic planning, the leadership of the company decides we are going to implement a new CRM, or it could be anything. We're going to buy another company, we're going to go into a new market, we're going to open a new office. So it's any of these types of initiatives. And let's say they say, okay, well, we're going to implement a new CRM. We're going to hand that over to the marketing department. And that's it. It goes down to the marketing department and leadership never takes another look at it. That's going to fail. And the reason it's going to fail is because marketing doesn't always have the ability to enforce policies and procedures across the organization, or to support people in all of the areas that they need to be supported in order to ensure that that initiative is successful. So if leadership is not intimately involved at some level, at a pretty good level, in making sure that change initiative is successful, then the chances are, the highest chances are that it's going to fail. And so number one, you really need to understand what kind of leadership commitment is going to be necessary, and make sure that if you've got commitment at your leadership level to stay involved in the process at an ongoing and detailed level. And I really believe that's the number one key to ensuring that any of your changes are successful. If you go back and look at some of the change initiatives that you've tried to implement over the years and look at maybe why they weren't successful, I think you'll see that leadership may have been involved in the beginning and at some point didn't stay involved and might have even dropped the ball on it, and that could be part of your challenge. So the second piece of advice I have for you, or best practice, is to really understand what your return on investment is going to be. And what that means is, what's it going to take? What kind of money are we going to have to spend to implement this change? But what do we expect to get back out of it? Because if you don't clearly understand your return on investment, along the way, it's going to be very hard to keep people motivated. And it's going to be very hard to articulate the value to the organization of what you're trying to undertake. And we're going to talk about communication and value in a few minutes. But first, start off by really understanding what that return on investment is. And some of it could be quantitative. Some of it may also be qualitative. For example, it could, by putting in a new performance management system, you might be having more engaged employees, and that has a value to the organization. Or it might improve your retention, which actually is a measurable number. So look at what is our return on investment and make sure you really understand and think through that. Next, you need to really think of your change initiatives as projects. And they need to be projects that are just as important as your billable projects. So you need to set them up as a project. You need to give them a scope with phases and tasks. You need to give them a timeline and a budget. And they need to get allocation of resources just as if they are a regular project, so that people can't get so absorbed in their billable work every day that they just decide to completely ignore your internal projects, which are still very, very important to you. So they need to be managed like a project, and many firms don't do this. I recently went into a company that was implementing a CRM, and I asked them to see their implementation plan. And they said, well, we have one, but it's not in writing. And I said, then you don't have one. So every internal initiative needs to have a very detailed scope, timeline, and budget. And entering it into your system, just like it's a regular project, having the people charge their time to it, and really tracking what it's costing you, it's going to be a very, very important part of making sure it's successful. The next is you need to have goals. And your goals need to follow the SMART goals criteria of being specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. We've all heard this before, but what this means is you need to set real goals for this initiative. How are you going to know this project is completed? How are you going to know if it's successful or not? How are you going to measure that success? Or are you trying to get things done that really aren't possible. For example, if you say, well, we need to have our CRM up and going by the end of the year, but you don't have a person in place to do it, you haven't purchased your CRM yet, and you don't have any data to put in it yet because all your data is a mess and needs to be scrubbed and cleaned and pulled out of hundreds of Word documents, well, I can promise you it's not going to happen. But that happens in many organizations, that they think they can take on a project and set an unattainable goal. And then, really having deadlines for getting things done, and not just deadlines for the final project, but every step along the way, and constantly checking in and having regular routines of meetings to make sure that you're keeping up with that timeline and it's on track. And then your team. You're going to have to assemble a team of people that are focused on making sure that the initiative is successful. And I apologize for having my team, the Washington Redskins, on the screen, but that's my team, been my team for my entire life. And if you think, the reason I have this image here is that if a sports team is putting together the best team possible to accomplish winning a game, winning their division, winning the whole season, winning the Super Bowl, they need to have the best possible team in place in every position. And what I find that happens with many firms when they're putting together teams of people for these internal change initiatives, they don't think through whether the people who are on the team have the right skill sets to accomplish those initiatives. So, or the time available to accomplish those initiatives. And then many times that's why the change initiatives fail, is because the people are really either over their head in terms of their skill sets, or they're too busy and really don't have time to take it on. Very often I see an accounting department will get 3 or 4 new change initiatives at the beginning of the year. Well, we're going to do 3 acquisitions, we're putting in a new accounting system, and we need a new performance management system. Well, I can promise you that's not going to happen if you hand all that stuff over to your accounting department and they're already working 50-hour weeks just to keep up with their normal day job. So putting together the team, you may need to consider outside resources, and in the long run, it may end up being cheaper for you to do that than to try to get your internal resources to do things and then never have your initiatives accomplished. So really think about that. And then planning. How are you going to manage these internal projects? Are you going to have regular meetings? Are you going to have them, put them in your system and put them into your project planning system that you're using? And so who's going to accomplish every task along the way? And how are you going to get this done? And really taking the time to think through the steps that need to be taken in order to get the project completed. And then I want to talk for a couple minutes about communication, because I really feel that this is one of the areas where many, many firms drop the ball. And I was recently working with a firm, and they were about to put a CRM in. And I was meeting with the team of people who were working on this, and it was a fairly large firm. And they had 2 failed CRM implementations in the past. And so I sat down with them to review what their communication plan was for rolling out the new CRM. And they really didn't have a good communication plan. And so I coached them through on what they needed to do to make sure that the CRM was accepted by the rest of the organization. And so first of all, I talked to them about starting with why. So I want you to think about something for a minute. And for you, those of you who have ever implemented a new system before, whether it's been an accounting system or an HR system or a CRM system, I want you to think about how did you communicate that to your team, to all of your staff? And this is what happens in many firms. It's kind of this common occurrence where the email goes out on Monday morning saying, dear staff, we are going to be implementing a new CRM. It's going to go live in 2 weeks, and you've been assigned to this training. please show up on X date at 9 a.m. for your training course on the CRM. And that's the only information that they get. So I want you to think about what's going on there when that happens. So you've got these different pockets of employees. Some are going, yay, we're getting a CRM. Others are saying, why are we getting a CRM? What is it? What does CRM stand for? I don't even know what that is. Others are going to be, oh yeah, here it goes again. We already had a couple failed CRMs. They're going to try it again. This is going to be a total waste of time. Why are they even doing that? And then you're going to have another group of people that say, oh God, more work for me. I got to learn a new system. It's going to make my job so much harder. I don't really want to do this. So you've got all these different pockets of people with different approaches to what you just told them is an extremely important project in your company, and you have the highest hopes for making sure it's going to be successful. But very often it's really because you didn't explain to everyone why. Why are we doing it? Why have we failed in the past? Why is this going to be better for you? And why is it so important to the health and success of the organization? A lot of that's just missing. And I have Simon Sinek's book up here because I read this book, and it's an excellent book about why every conversation you have in your organization needs to start with why. And it's very important so that you can really communicate and get people on board. You need to be able to articulate the value to the organization, the value to the individuals, the value to the teams, and even be ready to talk about the value to your clients, who you care about very, very much, because very often, your employees are talking to clients about your internal initiative, and you want them to be able to express to the client, this is going to enable us to do our job better and provide better service for you, rather than saying, oh yeah, we're implementing some CRM, I don't really know why we're doing that. So think about what is the value to all the key stakeholders, and be giving your employees the tools and the talking points to be able to articulate it. So the next thing to think about is the 30,000-foot view of your company. The average employee in your organization is in a silo. They might be in an office, they might be in a cubicle, they may be younger or middle level, etc. But very often, they're really only highly familiar with their own job, their own projects. They may have no idea what's going on at the top of the company. They may have no idea what's going on in the cubicle next to them, in the other office down the road, or in the next state. They may have no idea what the company's strategic goals and initiatives and plans are. There are so many areas where the 30,000-foot view of the company needs to be explained sometimes to your employees, and giving them a big picture look at what's going on. It really helps them gain perspective about why things are happening. I also feel like it's very, very important to ask employees their opinions. And by asking them their opinions, a minute ago we talked about why and the why the organization's doing it, but all of those little comments and things that people are saying and thinking behind your back, you need to know what those are. And by doing an anonymous survey or assessment of your employees, you're able to find out what they're really thinking and find out what they're struggling with, what their perceptions are. Even if they're not true, it's still good to know what those are. And then be able to use that data effectively to make sure you're addressing all of the issues that employees have as they're working through their job. So I find that asking them is really the best way to get that information. So I wanted to talk for a second about resistance, because when you think about change, you think about your employees resisting change. And you may personally resist change yourself. Even something as simple as getting a new cell phone, or if LinkedIn changes their format online, it can be frustrating. And of course, LinkedIn did that recently, and you don't even know why they did it. They didn't tell us why, they just did it, and it was very, very frustrating. So I used to post to my groups all the time. Now I can't do that anymore. Why is that? And then what happens is when employees resist, they go into a defensive mode, and you don't get them to buy in, and you don't get their cooperation. So why do employees resist change? Why does anyone resist any kind of change? You know, I did a bunch of research on this, and I thought this was the best way to describe the issue. There are 3 levels of resistance, and the highest level, the first overall level, is I don't get it. So think about the CRM implementation. Show up Monday morning for training. I don't know why we're doing this. Why do we need a CRM? What is a CRM? How's that going to help us? I don't think we really need that, right? So I don't get it means you haven't done an adequate job of really explaining to your people why you're doing something, why it's important, and why it's going to work and improve the business. So I don't get it as your first level. And you can just now, I'm sure, picture some of your people walking around the firm going, I don't know why we're doing this. Very important that you address that issue in your communication with your staff. The second level of resistance is I don't like it. What does I don't like it mean? I don't like it means I think this isn't good for me. I don't think this is going to make my life better. I don't think I'm going to like doing this. I think this is going to make my job harder, more tedious, more cumbersome. All the reasons that you can think of why your employees would not think that it's better for them. So what do you do about that? Well, what I recommend is you communicate what's in it for them. You acknowledge that it's going to be difficult to go through the change process, but on the other side of that, when all the training is conducted and they start to use it and get more comfortable with it, it's going to massively improve their life. And you need to give them specific examples of how that's going to happen and how you're going to achieve that. So you're going to get through the I don't get it by telling them the why. You're going to get through the I don't like it by telling them what's in it for them. The third level of resistance is I don't like you. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that they don't like you personally. It means that they don't like what you're doing because they don't think you know what you're doing. Well, why would that ever happen? Well, going back to the firm I just talked about, where they had implemented 2 CRMs that had failed over a 5-year period, when they send an announcement out to their employees saying, we're doing another CRM, what do you think those employees were thinking to themselves? Here we go again. We did this before, twice, it didn't work. What makes you think this one's going to work? That's what I don't like you is about. So how can we address that? Well, you know, I really feel like the best way to address that is to acknowledge that that happened. So you might start by saying, listen, in the past, we had 2 failed CRM implementations. We learned so much from that situation. And we're going to address all the issues that happen, and we're doing a much, much better job this time of making sure this is going to be a success. We're really evaluating our outcomes. We're getting a team of people together. We're planning it much more carefully. We're going to be testing it in depth and making sure that it works before we roll it out to everybody. So you're able to conquer each of those levels of resistance. And I really believe that when you get through those 3 levels of resistance, you'll start to see that people will break down the resistance and be more cooperative and more interested in helping you to make the change more successful. You know, one of the things I looked at when I was preparing this presentation was, you know, think about the military and especially the U.S. Marines. I have a lot of people who are Marines in my family, and they're so disciplined, and Marines are very, very good at holding people accountable and getting alignment around their core missions and goals. And so I went and talked to my son-in-law and asked him, how do you do that? What is it you do to get all of the people below you to align their goals and their purpose around the core missions of their organization. And what he said to me was, every person in command knows what the mission is of the person above them, and they know what the mission is of the people below them. And I thought that was really eye-opening, because when everybody in the organization truly understands the level above them and the level below them and what is critical to their success, you're going to have more alignment and more people working together to help you accomplish the goals. So we're going to talk about people, process, and technology, because these are the core of getting any good change initiative to be successful. If you have great people and great strategy around your people and you have great processes, but it's not well automated, then your people aren't going to have the tools they need to be successful. It's going to be, everything's going to take longer than it should. It's going to be a very manual process. If you have great processes and technology, but you don't train your people, you don't help them understand it, you don't communicate well with them, you don't train them on how everything works, it's going to be chaos, and everybody's just going to do things the way they want to do them, and there's going to be a complete lack of consistency. And if you have great people and great systems, but there's no processes, again, everybody's going to find their own way of doing things. And so you really have to address all three areas. My personal opinion is you start with process, you develop your processes, you make sure that they're really going to work for the majority of your organization, you document them, and then you figure out how to get them to work within your systems. You automate it to the point where it's bulletproof, where people can't work around the systems, and there's definitely some best practices around that, which could be a whole nother 1-hour presentation or more. And then you teach and you get your people on board. You teach them how the processes work, you teach them how the technology works, and then you hold them accountable to make sure that they're following the processes and using the technology. This is how I approach things and how I believe is the best approach to ensuring that a change initiative is successful. What it involves is looking at all of your processes with a very open mind. You know, are we doing things the best way? If you are implementing a new change initiative and all you're doing is duplicating what you already do, then you're going to get the same results that you already got. And so you really need to understand what is going on. We talked earlier about what's going on, but then you need to document that and look at all of your key processes, your time management processes, your billing, your project setup, your project management processes, your HR processes. All of those sales processes are very, very important, but many firms don't have sales processes that everyone is complying with or following or even knows what they are. So first start by documenting your processes and then look at how you can re-engineering them and improve them. And testing them and making sure that you can continuously improve those processes. I personally believe that processes can always be improved. And again, this requires consistently getting feedback from your team, maybe even on an annual basis, to ensure that your people recognize that things are getting better and they are actually following the processes and using the systems that you have in place. You can have the best processes in the world, you can have the best system, but if nobody's using it, it's a waste of time and money. So it's pointless, I believe, to put in a new system if nobody's using the old one and you're not really sure why that's happening. So you really need to dig in and really understand all this in order to, before you start to invest money in improving something. And then training. You really need to take the time to train your people. Having a new system in place is great, but if nobody knows how to use it, or if they get one day of training and it's never revisited again, I promise you, down the road, you're going to look at your user adoption rates and you're going to see that people are not using them. And they're not using your CRM. They're not using all of the systems that you've put in place. Your project managers may invent their own systems to track their projects because they can't get the information they want because they don't know how, or maybe they don't even understand what it is they're looking at. And so training involves really looking at all aspects of a person's job and making sure they have the skill sets and the tools and the understanding of the business and the tools to be able to do the best job possible to make sure that the company is successful. That could involve some online training, it could involve face-to-face training, it could involve a combination of those things. It could involve different aspects depending on what your needs of your organization are. And then you need to make sure you're measuring results. If you do not measure people and hold them accountable to the results, then number one, you're not going to have any idea whether what you're doing is working and whether the change initiatives are successful. And second of all, you're not going to be encouraging people to continue to follow the policies and procedures. And it's impossible to hold people accountable if you don't have goals set for them and regular reporting of results that can show people how they're doing. And the results need to be presented to them on a timely basis and in a fashion that they clearly understand. And many firms fail to do this on a timely basis or to hold people accountable. And finally, ultimately what this really does come down to is accountability. Accountability is a number of things. It's being responsible for your own behavior. It's incentivizing and rewarding people when they hit their goals or when they are successful. Having consequences for people who don't do what they're supposed to do. And so accountability means many things, but if there's no accountability around doing things, then you can implement all the wonderful systems and processes and new policies, or open a new office or do a merger and acquisition. But if people aren't held accountable, you're not going to get to see the results that you had and that you wanted, or to match the goals that you set at the beginning of that project. So accountability really means coming down to stopping excuses. Excuses like being too busy, any excuse that can come up within the course of implementing a change initiative that's going to derail you. And so making that unacceptable is really important. And I always give an example of, in my own company years ago, I had a very, very important change initiative going on, and we formed a committee, and people had volunteered to be on the committee because they wanted to have a voice and an input into what was happening in the company. And a few months in, we were meeting monthly or every 3 weeks maybe, and a few months into the project, several people showed up to the meeting without having completed the tasks that they had committed. And I said to them, you have one way out. What that means is, this is it. If you show up to the next meeting and have not completed a task that you committed to, you're off the committee. And that is a natural consequence of anything that you commit to. If you make a commitment and you don't keep up with it and you don't keep up with the deadlines and what you promised to do, then the change initiative is going to fail. And it's just like any other project in your company. If you have a deadline for a client, you don't want your employees giving your clients excuses about why things are always late. So the excuses have to stop, and there has to be consequences. So I just want to remind you the definition of insanity. I know you all know this, but it's just a good reminder. Don't need to say much more than that. And I really hope this has been valuable for you today. And I wanted to just give you an opportunity to go to GBA's website. The GEO Professional Business Association is a very valuable organization, has excellent tools for the members. If you are a member firm, or if you're an employee of a member firm, please go onto the website and look at all the wonderful resources that are there for you. GBA's mission is very focused on risk and business performance, and There are tons of documents, training, and case studies, and lots of other things on there that can help you to be more successful. And if you're not a member and you're in the geotech, environmental, or engineering field, I recommend that you go look at membership for that organization. I promise you I'll I just want to take like 1 minute to tell you what I do. I have developed an online training platform that is rolled out over 10 weeks to the middle and upper levels of your organization to help transform your technical and professional staff into business leaders. And what we do is train employees to help make more money and to recognize how the business really runs so that they can be more successful in their projects. And we're going to be having a webinar July 12th where we're going to be showing you how we do that. We have a very unique approach. Nobody else out there is doing anything like this. It's very focused. We guarantee our results. We've had many happy GBA members and other engineering firms and architectural firms participate in our training program. We've worked with probably over 70 firms over the last couple of years. I've been intimately involved with those firms to help them improve their profitability and their performance and the performance of their employees. And this program has been extremely successful. So I'd love to show you how we do that. And this webinar will be revolving around how we do it and some of the results that some of our clients have seen. So I appreciate the opportunity to show you that. And if you're interested, Leanne is going to be sending an email out after the webinar with a recording to the webinar in case you want to share it with anyone else in your company, and give you the ability to sign up for the webinar. And then one other thing we're offering you is the opportunity to download a free copy of my book, Find the Lost Dollars. And you can download this ebook at aecbusiness.com/ebook, and you'll be able to download an electronic copy of the book, and I hope you'll find it really valuable. The version that's on here right now is an abridged version of the book, and it's a very easy read. You can get through it very quickly. It'll give you tons of understanding of where you lose money in your A&E firm and how you can be more successful at finding the lost dollars. So I hope that would be a very valuable resource for you. And again, the link to download the ebook will also be in the email that Leanne's sending. And then also, if you'd like to communicate with me, I would love to hear from you. I love feedback about my webinars. I would love feedback around the book if you get a chance to read it. You can give me a call. You can email. I want to encourage everyone on this webinar. Over 100 people showed up today. I'd like to encourage you to link in with me. I have over 5,200 connections, many of them in the A&E industry, on LinkedIn, and linking in with me will give you access to my broad network and all the great resources from all of those companies that I'm attached to. And then also Twitter, which I'm not quite as up on, but I am somewhat involved in Twitter. And then, of course, you can go to our website and see more about our online business management assessment tool and our online training program. So I hope this has been extremely valuable for you. I hope you have more insight now into maybe why some of your change initiatives have not been successful in the past or have stalled or not realized the kind of benefits that you wanted them to. And I hope you have some great ideas now about what you can do to make sure that any ongoing or future initiatives that you have will be successful. And I see that we do have some messages here in the chat.
I think I've answered those, June, so there aren't any new ones.
Okay, so yeah, a couple of people asked what CRM is and ERP, and I apologize. I really should always define those things when I'm talking, but ERP is Enterprise Resource Planning. It usually involves accounting, integrated accounting, project management, and marketing software that people are using to manage their engineering firms, such as Deltek or other products out there. And then CRM is client relationship management, which is specifically related to going after new business and managing opportunities and proposals. And then John said, I believe you need a maverick or cheerleader to help drive the change, to paint the picture of where we're going. I completely agree with that. And I think that's a great point, John, that you make, that you really do need a champion within your organization to help drive the change. Just make sure it's the right person that's all part of the team that you're going to be putting together, and it can make or break your success by having the right leader. And the leader really needs to be someone who's really committed and passionate about the change initiative, and has the authority internally to hold people accountable and to drive people to do what they want. One person asked, will there be more webinars in the future, and will we get invitations? If you're on our mailing list and you're currently getting our emails, we will provide you with invitations to future webinars. There will also be a link to the next webinar in the email that Leanne sends afterwards. And we generally have educational webinars about once a month. And we're also doing 2 more webinars with GBA, one in September, and I think one's called Creating a Profitable Culture, and one is called Developing Superstar Project Managers. And so you can go onto our website and look under webinars, and you can sign up for those as well if you're interested in those. So great. I'm very excited to have all of you on today. And somebody also asked, which audience would you recommend attend the webinars? Should I forward to the PMs and admins? Absolutely. We actually have a lot of PMs and admins on today. We also have firm leaders, principals, emerging leaders. There's always something that people can take away in these discussions, and anytime that you can build the awareness in your company about what's going to make them more successful, I think you're going to add value to that person's career and their performance in what they're doing. So we try to make our webinars as focused on as many broad areas of people as possible, because we know we do have a wide audience, and our mailing list of over 10,000 people is every role in the company. We have marketing people, IT people, CEOs, every role in the company. We even have brand new interns that they're learning, and they're learning how the organization runs. And even if an intern is working on a project and says to their project manager, what am I supposed to be doing today? That adds a lot of value to the organization, because they're not going to go off and spend 30 hours doing something that should have taken 5. So anytime that you can work with your people and make them better at what they do, I think it's going to add value. So yes, I would, anybody that you think could get something out of the topic that we're covering. And I want to encourage you to reach out to me. I love hearing from you. I always respond to all the emails that I get, and I would love to talk to any of you, especially after you get a chance to read the book, or if you already read my book and provide me with some feedback, what you thought about it. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for attending today, and I look forward to being a resource to all of you in the future. Thank you so much.